All right. No echo, and you all can hear me. And it's digital, so they can hear me too. I'll just try to project it for everyone back. Actually getting it there. All right. Well, cool. I'm going to go ahead and put it forward unless you say otherwise right now. All right. Greetings, everyone out there. I am Captain Guest from 90th COS Air Force out in San Antonio. And today we're going to talk about steganography. First, we're going to go over a little background for anyone not familiar with the topic, and then go into various common methods of how steganography is applied, and then figure out how you can find someone using steganography, and then kind of tie it all together, figure out what this can mean to us as attackers and defenders. My basic background. Why would you care? We have high fidelity encryption algorithms these days. PKI works great, but sometimes you don't even want someone to know that you're sharing a message. Steganography itself comes from Greek. If you all could read the Greek letters there, steganos is the first bit. It just means covered writing. Unlike cryptography, it doesn't. So, main difference between cryptography is with cryptography, you're going to be changing things entirely. Substitution cipher is a good example, where what you look at, you're looking at it, you can tell it's an encrypted code. With steganography, you'll have a cover, typically, and then something hidden inside. Good examples used back in 400 BC, long history of steganography. Aeneas the tactician went through literally dozens of techniques you could try to use to hide and send information, ideally under siege. Just trying to get information out to your compatriots, and people who have you in siege are trying to stop you. So you can use various methods. One popular, a famous one anyway, was when you tested or told the story of shaving the head of a mistrusted servant, tattooing a message to the scalp, waiting until the hair grew back, and then sending the servant out. Another method that's been used many times through history is a masked letter, where you'd have a cover sheet with holes in it, you place on a sheet of paper, and you write out your message through the holes. And then you can remove that, and you fill it all out with the entire letter. You could sound like the love letter to whoever, and you just put the love letter in the mail, and separately distribute the mask to the recipient. And as soon as they open the letter, put the mask on top, they can read the original message. So the mask reveals the actual message that's hidden in something that just looks like a love letter. There's also been ladies, typically, who've knitted shirts more recently. World War II, in Belgian-occupied territory, the Belgian women would sit on the porch and just knit and look for when trains or troops went by, and they could literally just drop a stitch to represent the time and the day. And then, because there's been a common history of distributing sweaters, scarves to troops, they could get distributed, and the recipients could look at the knitting and get information out of it. So it's been highly used. Obviously now, there are a lot of computerized methods of steganography. But the general principle is that you have some e-cover. You embed some data in there some way or another that's hidden. And then on the other side, they know what method is used, and they can then take the data back out of the hidden message. There's many methods that can be used to hide data. Some common computer ones are in audio files, using any of a number of network channel methods. Image files are really popular, partly because you can have a lot of data space available in high resolution images these days, and many more. Just earlier today, we had a talk discussing how to leverage LLMs for steganography as well. Really, it's only limited by what you can come up with in your ingenuity. Here's an example of audio. This isn't a super practical example the way it's shown here in the picture. This is literally 109 rows of the wave format. So it's just representing the wave structure. And if you line them up on top of each other, it reveals a picture that was hidden in here. There's definitely much better ways to encode data in audio. This one's impractical, but it just looks cool. It totally works. Some common methods are like imperceptible echo, where you'd have basically you repeat a frequency to represent 1, or you don't, in a given timetable to represent 0. And they're so close together, literally tiny fraction of a second, that a human can't hear the difference. They're listening to the covered audio. The computer could easily detect that, though. So there's other methods you might use. Recently, people have been looking at setting up adversarial networks where the one side keeps trying to use any sort of amplitude fluctuations, whatever it is fed up to do, typically an amplitude is a common one, to fool the network that's trying to detect whether or not there's a hidden message. And those adversarial networks have been pretty effective at encoding. The other common method was network. Here's kind of a breakdown. Their network covers a lot of ground. When I say network, it can be physically altering the data that's being sent inside the packets via the payload, little step beside that. And then timing attacks. Like, there's a whole category where you're not even altering the data in any way. So if there's a scanner that's looking for altered data to find common methods, you won't see that because what you're actually doing is adjusting the time, which is a timing attack. So for those ones, you might use altering. If you've been able to own the inside network, you're trying to get data out, you can be adjusting the time that packets are allowed in and out to that network. And based on the frequency of the packets, you can use that to represent your ones or your zeros for your data. It's also actually manipulating the packets themselves to set payloads. It's pretty common, maybe a little too common because it's easy to find these days, but the padding. Padding's not really used for anything. You can shove some bits in the padding and just use that to grab all of the data they need off the network. And those are all, just a brief overview of network attacks. With the padding, the bit rate isn't necessarily super high. With images, a very common method is the least significant bit, where you're just adjusting the basically the 1 value of a color representation. 3-channel or 4-channel, but this 3-channel RGB uses 0 to 255 typically to represent images. And here, those two are different green values. The one on the my right, this is screen right too. And the one on the right is 1 value higher, but the human eye cannot tell the difference between those two. And that's leveraged to hiding a bunch of data in image files. And I'll have a little demo showing something about that later. All right, you can also take advantage of various compression methods in images. It's also fairly common here. Don't know how familiar everyone is with the cosine compression of JPEG images, but basically you take an 8x8 grid and you tile across the entire image, and you have a matrix representing how much each of the cosine transforms apply to the final image. It's additive. Main thing is that the low frequencies tend to not be used much at all. Sorry, I say that backwards. High frequencies tend not to show up very much because you'd have to have like every little pixel be different for the highest frequency to matter. So the low frequency in the top left is used most, which leaves a lot of basically white space that you could pack in any of those 0 sections. You could use as a place to hide your data without altering the end result of the image effectively at all. So it's imperceptible visually, although this one's also fairly easy to detect if you go looking for it. All right, and we're a little short on time, but I do have a little demo here if I can get to Visual Studio. This is using the classic least significant bit method, and it opened up on the other screen, of course. I'm going to go ahead and shove that over. Here, I have here a picture of my cat. His name is Salem. It's a very cute but mean cat. Sorry about that. Let's see here. So, oh, this is my clipboard. Of course I don't. Live demos are the devil, and I shouldn't try to do this. Perhaps one moment, please. Let's see here. Let's grab this. So this is the text for the complete works of Shakespeare from Project Gutenberg. Wow. So I'm trying to use the remote session to his screen here. All right, you all tab. Tab. I do have a bit limit on here, character limit, so going to cut off at about a little bit under 200,000 characters. Still enough to have all of the sonnets, all of his message. All right. So enough data here to have complete works of his sonnets, first article, and yeah. Let me ask this question. Is it finished? There we go. All right. Can anyone see any difference in the picture on the right? Because that picture now has over 200,000 ASCII characters hidden inside of it. Let's see if it really does. There, it's back. So yeah, you cannot visually tell the difference. So how do you find out when stuff is hidden? If the whole goal of steganography is for an adversary not to even know you've hidden something, well, we wouldn't want to just let that be if possible. So people had devoted quite a bit of time and effort into discovering ways of detecting such things. And that's called steganalysis. Off the side. There you go. Hi, so steganalysis. There's a number of different ways that have been leveraged to figure out if someone is hiding something. They don't want us to know it. Some really basic methods, more advanced statistical methods, some pretty advanced ones are worthy of patents, in fact, for the advanced statistical methods. And machine learning has also been leveraged a little more often recently. I'm going to focus these examples specifically on the least significant bit image, but the methods can be applied to many different types of steganography. With basic analysis, if you have both the original image and the cover image, you can just take a diff. If there are differences, then something's probably been altered, and it's likely hiding information. Now, what do you do if you don't have the original image? You have nothing to compare it to. If all you are is looking at that cute cat picture that's posted to Instagram, are you out of luck? Well, not necessarily. There are other methods that one can use to figure out if an image message is likely hitting. For instance, I actually ran ahead and ran just several dozen iPhone images. So iPhone 14 Pro, and looked for just length of runs. With the CMOS sensor not being super, I can phrase this. The CMOS sensor is not perfect. The actual image sensor when you take a picture, and it's noisy enough. There's enough noise that the least significant bit is roughly random. I don't have it up here, but I did also run that on the like a dozen iPhone 14 Pro images, and the distribution wasn't zeros, within 0.01% of 50-50. Pretty evenly zeros and ones in the least significant bit. And the runs in least significant bits, you're likely to have 00, 11, 010 maybe. But you look at, sorry, with the runs, look particular 00 or 11, maybe you get 000, maybe 4 zeros in a row. But even getting to just 10 zeros in a row or 10 ones in a row is extremely unlikely with the roughly random data coming up off the bit. So if you looked at something that was encoding even just, say, 4 32-bit, so I have it written down here because I did the math, the odds of getting 4 32-bit unsigned zeros, so that amount of length, 32 zeros, just randomly showing up in the least significant bits of a photo are about 0.001%. Even odds. It's just 4 integers, zeros. So if you see something like that, there's probably something hidden in the image. But you may say, I have this data I want to hide. I'll go ahead and encrypt it first, because a good encryption method is probably going to have roughly an even distribution of ones and zeros as well, and then they won't see me. Well, that's where some advanced methods come in. So even if you encrypt your data first and then you shove it in least significant bits, I'm going to have to back up a little bit and say, while off the CMOS sensor, the distribution is roughly 50-50, and it looks like random noise, there is a correlation from that lowest bit plane to higher bit planes. And by bit plane, I just mean all of the 1 bits to the lowest significant bit, all the 2s and the 3s, the first bit, second bit, third bit, those are bit planes. And there has been proven to be a correlation between the bit planes in an image. And you can leverage that correlation, as leveraged in the, I guess fairly well known in the industry, the RS methods, as they call it, because this method, you break down an image into 4-bit sections, and each 4-bit section is either assigned a tag as regular, singular, or unusable. They just throw that one away. So it's just RS. And you look at how those relate to the bit planes, and they ought to, in a normal image, align roughly 50-50, as they put it through the calculator. If you want to know exactly how it works, I put the patent number up there. You can look it up. It's actually pretty cool. If, however, you shove in encrypted data, even if it looks roughly the same, at least if you bit, it will shift this intersection point in the center. And the amount by how much it shifts actually gives you a good sense of the amount of data that was changed. And again, this can be done with just the original image itself. So it's pretty impressive, pretty fancy, and is worthy of being assigned a patent number. A more modern method being leveraged, maybe because it's hot, maybe because it's more effective. Well, I think the goal is that it will be more effective, is actually machine learning techniques. So here it also doesn't need to have an original image, and this one, if it was trained on hundreds of examples of original and hidden, hidden. This is still working on methods. In 2020, Chemont was able to get about 89% accuracy of detecting if an image if it was just a cover image, if it had hidden data. The 89 was pretty good, but not as good as the existing 98% for the RS method. And Alfarge et al. Took this step further and were able to get a 97% accuracy with their setup. However, both these examples were on very small images. They were only able to train about 256 by 256, whereas most live examples are probably going to be using something like an iPhone image, which is certainly much larger than 256 pixels by 256 pixels. So this is, moving forward, the Algarve was 2023 paper. That was able to keep achieve 97%, and they were just excited that they were close to RS. So if they can get to a roughly 100%, might just be a matter of scale. As we've seen with other machine learning methods, often you have something that looks like it's going in a good direction, and you scale up compute, and you get much better results. If this is already getting 97%, albeit on small images, it's possible it could be more reliable if you scale up. So that's an area that could definitely be looked at further. Again, this is 2023's state of technology. I know we're 2024 now. We'll see what sort of papers come out this year. All right. And I went over why you'd want to hide, because sometimes you don't even want people to know you're sending messages. It can be extremely boring. Otherwise, they would just stop. Like in wartime, sending knitted sweaters. Hey, sweaters are fine. But if they knew it was sending a message, they wouldn't allow it at all. Went over the basics of how to hide stuff. But just take analysis. How do you find the stuff that's been hidden? What it means. So, yeah, I'm excited about steganography myself. I feel like cryptography gets a lot of the attention these days, and it is extremely effective. But if you're in, say, you're in a system, you need to exfiltrate data off, even if it's random bits, but it's obvious the packet's being sent to some sort of command and control, that's bad. If you could, say, just update the least significant bits of the image that's already being posted to the public server, say the background image on their main page, you could just grab that and decode it yourself later. I mean, don't want to go into too many like TTP sort of things. Just saying that there is certainly some room for people to think about how this could be applied to real life scenarios. And as you're doing that, understand that there are many different ways to detect that things are hidden, and you can consider that in your risk assessment analysis you do for yourselves. That concludes my briefing. Any questions? Oh, yes, Grant. Yeah, so the question is if I've heard or seen any ideas that implement string analysis. I've seen and heard ones that take baseline for machine learning, essentially, and just try to see if anything is different from baseline, which, in theory, could catch some of this. I've not seen any that specifically say they are looking for steganography. The question is if I've seen steganography in the real world or can say that I have. I can't really. You're welcome. Oh, yeah, I think last question. We should probably you all get out. Yeah, so the question is if you can leverage generative AI to actually just put the message in a generated image in the first place, and then have a way to decode on the back end. Hadn't thought about that. So it sounds reasonable, and yeah, it would give you, I guess, more bit depth than just maybe a paragraph of hidden data. All right, thank you all for your time. I guess it's Captain Guest, the 90 Costs, signing off.